My name is Lara Morgan. I was the founder of Pacific Direct in 1991. I sold it 6 years ago and built a business that very happily exited. I still own 20% of that business. I've had a really interesting journey actually since exiting at the age of 40. Some of the best advice I got is that whatever you do, don't really think very hard about things that you want to do and stuff that you want to do, because when you exit, it may never happen. So then when it did happen, I had this extraordinary situation. Because I was 99% shareholder when I sold the business, I was the signature on the documentation, which took 3 hours and 48 minutes. And I had flown in, and I drove all the way back to my mother-in-law's house, went straight to bed, having just allegedly sold my baby. And it was very bizarre. In fact, I'd had this vision, and this is the day of my exit that mattered very much, and it had been a vision that really drove me, which is, I tell this story, which is I wanted to go into a bank and queue at the counter and hand over the piece of paper, which is what I had gone into the bank to do. And the queue was quite long, but I was quite happy queuing, because I knew at 3:30 the next day afternoon the money would be deposited. And I handed my piece of paper under the counter, and the lady did her bit. And then she took a look at me, and she took a look at her paper, and she started writing, and she started shaking. And she then looked at me again, and she said, "Shall I write this in my best handwriting?" And by this time, there were tears streaming down my face, which is, ridiculous. We had a plan, which was to take the children away. But actually, I couldn't get away straight away because they didn't have a replacement CEO. So I stayed on in my role, in my business, as the new less than 20% shareholder when I'd been running the show for nearly a year. It was pretty challenging because I was still putting my business first. And in fact, it wasn't my business. I desperately wanted to stay on in Pacific. I have a great team of people there. But in the end, I was removed from the board, which is quite classic, quite emotional. I refused to resign because there was something about I wouldn't resign from my own company. And then I literally packed everything off, and we took the kids away, and we travelled for 5 months around Australasia, which was priceless. I had this sort of, not a bucket list, but just a list of stuff. And I know other people are the same, but I needed to get my teeth checked. I needed to get my eyes checked. I'd ignored my own self for so long. I got involved in Startup Britain at a time when Britain was really in tumultuous enterprise, challenging period for business. I think that was a really good way of just stepping and putting my toe in the water again and going, actually, do I want to be back in business? What kind of business do I want to be back at? I consider myself to be very lucky that I am involved in a number of businesses. I mean, my dad went bankrupt, so my driver when I ran Pacific was that fear of failure. And truthfully, I think that once you've sold a business, there is this thing where, oh, you must be great. I'm realistic. I got very lucky, and I had an amazing team of people. And yes, I worked hard, but I hadn't got all the answers. And I was driven by the fear of these other people in this competitive market catching me up. And if you call that failure, no, but I was terrified of failing, and it was a race. If I was to reflect and be very honest, I have had some very low periods since I sold Pacific, because people do assume that you've got all the money in the world. Therefore, you're happy. It's only when you have all the money in the world you can say that's not the case. Money is not everything. And I think that when you exit, the one quickest thing that I should have recognized and should have been maybe more honest with myself about is the reality that I know a lot about toiletries. I know a lot about the hotel industry. So I think that, it's that advice which I give my own children, which is just do what you're passionate about. I mean, I can't believe that I'm working harder than when I ran Pacific. And I think I am, but I love it.